Hey guys, it is Ryan. I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I'm a bit of a fun fanatic when I can. I like to work, but I like fun too. It's a thing. And now the truth is out there. I can tell you about my favorite place to have fun. Chumba Casino. They have hundreds of social casino style games to choose from with new games released each week. You can play for free anytime, anywhere. And each day brings a new chance to collect daily bonuses. So join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
There was a listener who was holding, and I didn't have time to get to his call before he had to hang up, who just wanted to thank me for the talking about depression at Christmas. And you are very welcome. And again, for those of you who aren't, you probably do not know you probably actually do know someone who is struggling at this time of year. And I would just genuinely, truly encourage you that if you don't think that you know someone who is, I promise you that someone really is, and I hope you will consider just being loving to all of your friends out there during the holiday season, and to those who might be alone, who can't be home, who are going through rough times, putting on a happy face, that you reach out to them, because there are a whole lot of people. This is one of those times of year when someone's parents have died, a sibling or a child, or they're home, they're at college and they can't get home, they're working their first job, they're in your church. There are a lot of people who, like I know, for example, now I could get home at Christmas, but Thanksgiving was a struggle. And typically I was at Mercer. My family lived in Louisiana. I was at Mercer University over in Macon, Georgia, and couldn't get home for Christmas, or for Thanksgiving rather. And inevitably there would be someone who'd say, "Hey, why don't you come to my house?" And it was always meant a lot to me. And as I got older, started doing that for other people who couldn't get home. When I started doing cooking and stuff. So just keep that in mind, please. A lot of people this time of year, it's not a pleasant, happy, jolly, merry holiday for people because of life and the things that they're going through. Now, I got to talk about a story. I'm going to clean this up so your kids can be in the car. It's okay. I get sometimes criticized saying, well, you focus too much on stories that happen in Atlanta. So I'm going to focus on a story that happened in Chicago. Samuel Parson Salas. I want to read you this from CWBChicago.com. Surveillance video captured the cold-blooded execution-style murders of 3 people outside a Chicago bar this past weekend. Officials say the killer is a man who was paroled less than 3 months ago for a 2009 home invasion that left 2 people dead. He faced 10 counts of murder in the home invasion case, but prosecutors dropped the charges in a plea deal. The weekend shooting video shows a group arguing near Vera Lounge at the corner of Central Avenue and School Street around 2:30 a.m. Sunday. A man is seen walking backward, pulling a gun, and shooting another man. The victim drops to the ground. The gunman takes a few more steps backward, fires his gun again. Another man, who appears to be pleading with him, grabs his head, steps backward, falls to the ground. At this point, the gunman walks quickly toward the 2 injured men. Without even stopping, he shoots and kills a woman who was tending to the first victim. He continues to the second victim and shoots him directly in the head. The shooter sprints towards a waiting car, shoots another person at point-blank range, doubles back and shoots the person again, then climbs into the vehicle's passenger seat, and the SUV drives away. The shooting left 3 people dead, a 24-year-old woman, a 26-year-old man, a 59-year-old man. Another 24-year-old woman remains hospitalized, gravely wounded. Police said Samuel Parson Salas, 32, is charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of attempted murder and kidnapping. He's due in bond court on Wednesday. In 2014, he was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and other charges in a 2009 home invasion that left 2 men dead. he reached a plea deal with prosecutors in 2018 that resulted in him pleading guilty to 2 counts of home invasion in exchange for an 8-year sentence. Appellate court records show the sentence was given by Judge William Gamboni. Prosecutors dropped 30 other felony charges, including 10 counts of murder. And then he was released from prison on an 8-year sentence. From 2018, he stayed in until September 23, 2022, and remained on parole. He previously went to prison twice for robberies. So you have a man who went to prison twice for robberies, then murdered multiple people in a home invasion where prosecutors dropped the murder charges, and has now murdered 3 and critically wounded a 4th, all captured on camera. How did this man get out of prison? Because the prison system failed him? No. Because the prison system failed you? No. It's because the judicial system and the prosecutors failed to take the matter seriously. You go from multiple robberies to a home invasion where you kill 2 people. My suspicion, I don't know the facts, but my suspicion is he was charged in 2014. The home invasion was in 2009. Enough time had probably lapsed that evidence had gone stale, and they could tie him to the home invasion, but probably could not specifically tie him to killing the 2 people. He was willing to take a deal of some kind, and now he's killed 3 people. So now I will talk about Atlanta, Georgia. In a gated community in the nice part of town, a 70-something-year-old grandmother whose son had just come home for Christmas went into her garage because she heard a commotion and was stabbed to death by the young man stealing her car. He had gotten into the gated community and was stealing her car. She was murdered about 2 weeks before Christmas. Turns out he had a rap sheet too and should have been in jail. But they were soft on crime. And I got to say something kind of provocative here that I don't mean to be. But I do get the sense that race was involved in these situations, such that the prosecutors, because they were not white, went with the troubled life in the systemically racist society. So we're going to slap you on the hand and show you that we're not bad people, we're not racist, and the system works to your benefit. And what do? They murdered other people. We need to start throwing the book at all these people. We need to not play the game. There are some really malcontented souls. They thrive in social media. And they're very loud, and companies need to stop paying attention to them. You know, let's go back to the Rush Limbaugh situation. It was discovered, there was a massive campaign after Rush Limbaugh said his comments about Sandra Fluck. There was a massive campaign to get him taken off the air, and it didn't work, but a lot of advertisers dropped. There were some of the advertisers wanted to get off talk radio anyway, and that was a convenient excuse. General Motors, for example. General Motors didn't want to keep advertising on talk radio at the time. General Motors was a big sponsor for a number of conservative radio stations and radio shows, radio hosts. There were people who drove Cadillac Escalades and other things in lieu of payment, undoubtedly, probably, and they talked about it, and they got ads and stuff, and they were ready to be done as a company that financially, fiscally, they needed to be done. They were on hard times at the time. They're like, oh, we're done. A lot of companies, they canceled, but other companies, there was a pressure campaign by liberal activists to get them to boycott Rush Limbaugh and shut him down. Premier, to their credit, stood by Rush Limbaugh. It turns out that the advertising campaign was conducted by about 5 people who literally were calling all over the country, disguising their voices, pretending to be an army, a legion of people. They were legion, except they weren't. They just sounded like it. Same thing happens in these situations. Loud voices who demand action. And you've got a lot of George Soros-funded prosecutors around the country who have bought into the idea of systemic racism in this country. They want to show they're fair. They want to show they're loving. They led these people out of prison. They go on and murder other people. That's how they pay them back. They murder because they are monsters who should have stayed in prison instead of being nice. Are there injustices? Yes. But our prosecutors have clearly decided they don't know how to discern who should be still in prison. And the police have become the bad guy, and the police are quitting. Do you know one of the things, the number of conservatives I know, the number of people who listen to this program, who when I have defended the broken window theory of crime that Rudy Giuliani used to keep New York safe, they email me, oh, no. Studies show it's not effective. Really? Because the real world evidence showed it was really damn effective in New York until Bill de Blasio stopped using it. The broken window theory of crime is very simple to understand. You see a building with a broken window, and a week later, the broken window is still there. You know the building is vacant, so you can move into it as a vagrant, as a drug dealer, as a criminal, and use it as a base of operations. Because if the window is broken for more than a week, a homeowner would fix the window unless they don't live there, and then you know it's vacant, and you can move in and set up criminal operations, and from there spread. So the moral of the story is you enforce the property division crimes of broken windows and signage and yardage and jaywalkers and people who block the box at the intersection, and you show you're serious about the small stuff. The big stuff finds other places to go because they know you're not going to mess around with them. And it worked. Crime in New York City plummeted. And then progressives like, but it's so bad. You threw someone in jail because they had marijuana on them and a gun and a knife and blueprints to a house they wanted to go rob. Mayor Bloomberg got in trouble because he was talking about that they're throwing stop and frisk. They were throwing young black men up against the wall and patting them down to see if they had guns. They said, isn't this racist? Isn't this racist? He says, no, race has nothing to do with it. We're going into the neighborhoods where all the gun crimes are committed. The gun crimes are committed by young men in their teens and 20s in these neighborhoods. So if we see them, we pat them down and see they got a gun on them. Yes, it happens to be a black neighborhood, but that happens to be where the crime is. Race has nothing to do with it. Age and profile, young male roaming the streets alone. But they're black. Every time I drive home now from the radio studio, south on 75, every single time in the last 2 months I've gone home, I have been passed by Dodge Chargers with tinted windows going at least 100 miles an hour. And when they pass, you can smell the marijuana coming through your AC. They're driving fast and they're smoking weed. There are accidents waiting to happen. I've pointed this out before and got yelled at that I was making a racist statement. It's like, they blew past me at 100 miles an hour with a tinted window. I don't know what the race the driver was, but you sure seem to be jumping to a conclusion. Pull them over. I mean, if you own a Dodge Charger these days, you're almost asking to be pulled over in Atlanta because those are the people doing all the street racing, it seems. That's not racial profiling. That's profiling the people who drive Dodge Chargers, seem to buy them because they look like cop cars, so everybody else slows down and they speed up. But around the nation, prosecutors and police officers are making each other the bad guy. The bad guys are getting out. They're all soft on crime, and many of the really good police officers out there are walking away from the job because they're being targeted by these criminals. There's a police officer the other day in Georgia killed. You know, 10 years ago, we took crime seriously. We cracked down, and we ignored the screaming loud voices who claimed it was all racism because they were pushing an agenda, not the truth. If we went back to that, I suspect crime might go down when you treat it seriously. A friend of mine and I were discussing Boll and Branch sheets the other night when he was sitting on the front porch with me, and he didn't believe that they got softer and softer every time you washed them. His wife was not convinced at all. She figured it was all marketing hype. Now she wants Boll and Branch sheets for all of their beds at home. Why? Because they really do get softer every time you wash them. They're free of toxins, pesticides, harsh chemicals at every step of the process. They're the finest 100% organic cotton on earth. They're made by artisans who earn the pay and the respect they deserve. And right now, you can bring home a better night's sleep this holiday season with Boll and Branch bedding. Their signature sheets even come wrapped and ready in a beautiful holiday gift box. It's going to look good. It's going to feel great. For a limited time, get 20% off your first set of sheets and free shipping when you use promo code ERIC at bollandbranch.com. That's Boll and Branch, BOLLAND branch.com. Promo code is ERIC, ERICK at bollandbranch.com. Hello there. It is Eric Erickson here. The problem is the phone number. Sorry, I'm reading while I'm talking about it. It's not a problem. The phone number is 877-973-7425. All right. Let me go squeeze in a phone call here. Mitchell, you're going to be up next. Welcome.
Hey, thank you for taking my call, Eric.
Sure.
So my comment is based on me watching local news here locally in Atlanta. And when I hear people on the news, whether it just be residents or leaders, and they love to say that there's a gun problem, and they like to blame Brian Kemp's gun laws on a gun problem. So my question is, what are your thoughts on the people that call it a gun problem rather than a people problem? And also, I would like to get your comment on the kids that are killing kids. And so a gun law is not going to keep a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old from getting a gun when the law is obviously being broken several ways there. Yeah. And also, my very last thing is, when do you think we'll start holding guardians and parents accountable for these kids doing this stuff?
Well, so, if the kid is 16 or over, we can't hold the parents accountable under law. Let me address the gun thing. And it's easy to blame Brian Kemp, but what did Brian Kemp do? All he did is sign into law a law that allowed people to carry a weapon concealed if they were a lawful purchaser who went through a background check. Those aren't the people committing the crimes. I know it's inconvenient for people who want to blame Brian Kemp for gun violence. He's not the one who is causing it. And a concealed carry law makes people safer. It doesn't make people less safe. These crimes were happening before he was. I'll tell you, the escalating factor has been district attorneys being soft on crime and mayors around the country being soft on crime, Democratic mayors. Atlanta wasn't having a crime wave until Keisha Lance Bottoms threw the police under the bus, and the police stopped policing, and a lot of them walked off the job. We weren't having a massive crime wave in Atlanta until that happened. That's just a fact. We weren't having massive crime waves around the country. It's not like there's been this massive rush of guns by people. Well, except there has been, because people have been feeling unsafe and they're having to take care of themselves. This entire blame the Republicans for guns. I hate to tell you that it's not the guns killing people, it's people killing people. They're just using the gun as a tool. If it wasn't the gun, it would be something else. We've got a spiritual crisis in this country, and politicians don't want to talk about spiritual crises. We have a collapse of family in this country. People headed into crime. This is the situation. We have a decaying, collapsing society around us. It's sad to see. It's not getting any better, it seems. And I wish there was a legitimate solution. There's just, at this point, unless we're willing to start talking about putting families back together and keeping families together and restoring the spirit of America and getting people back into church and belief in God, I don't think it gets any better. And I don't know how you do that. There's not a revival in the country. Politicians aren't going to help, but there is something politicians can do. They can help improve the economy and put people back to work and incentivize people going back to work so we have fewer idle hands in America. Hello there. It is Eric Erickson here. The markets are plummeting right now. The Dow down 121 points, NASDAQ down 73 points. Looks like interest rate increases are going to be going up for a while. The Federal Reserve has now raised interest rates half a point to the highest level in 15 years. So now that my computer is suddenly updated, the Dow is down 354 points. Jerome Powell has been speaking, talking about the increase in rates and suggests it could potentially continue to go on for quite a while longer as they continue to deal with inflation that they are insistent must get to the 2% level. That has sent markets absolutely into a free fall. People were expecting a signaling that they may raise a half a point or a 0.5% rather, and then cut it out. And Powell is signaling that no, actually, we could be going on for quite some time. Here's from the CNBC, keeping with expectations. The rate-setting Federal Open Markets Committee voted to boost the overnight borrowing rate 0.5 percentage point, taking it to a targeted rate between 4.25 and 4.5%. The increase broke a string of 4 straight 3/4 point hikes, the most aggressive policy since the early 80s. Along with the increase came an indication that officials expect to keep rates higher through next year with no reduction until 2024. The expected terminal rate, or a point where officials expect to end the rate hikes, was put at 5.1%, according to the FOMC's dot plot of individual member expectations. Investors reacted negatively to the expectation that rates may stay higher for longer, and stocks gave up gains. Chairman Powell's comments at a press conference will be closely watched. That press conference is happening along with several others right now, and he is, well, the markets are reacting rather poorly to the situation as Jerome Powell continues to speak. Bloomberg, CNBC showing the charts of the markets plunging. In fact, the markets were up significantly until the announcement came at 2 p.m., and the markets have begun to crash as Jerome Powell speaks. Not good news for the markets today, not good news for investors today, given the situation. That being said, it probably needed to happen. And it probably needed to happen because inflation is wiping out people's savings. Inflation is wiping out people's wage increases. Inflation is really running amok in the nation right now. Not a good setup for anybody. That's breaking news happening right now. The Federal Reserve has raised interest rates 0.5 percentage point. It is the highest interest rates we've had in about 8 years. And they don't expect to 15 years. They don't expect to halt the rate increases until 2024. They intend to go all the way up to 5.1% from where they are now. So about another full point over time if things continue in the trajectory they are. Not great economically, but probably also necessary. All right, I got to move on to other things. So there's more data out about Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis among Republicans and Republican-leaning people. The Wall Street Journal, it's their turn to share their polling and their data Here is the data from the Wall Street Journal. John McCormick writing, Republican primary voters have high interest in Florida Governor Ron DeSantis as a potential 2024 presidential nominee and view him more favorably than they do former President Donald Trump, a new Wall Street Journal poll shows. In a hypothetical contest between the two, DeSantis beats Trump 52-38 among likely GOP primary voters contemplating a race in which the first nomination votes will be cast in just over a year. The poll found Mr. DeSantis is both well-liked and well-known among Republicans who say they're likely to vote in a party primary or nominating contest. 86% view the Florida governor favorably, compared with 74% who view Donald Trump favorably. 1 in 10 likely GOP primary voters say they don't know enough about DeSantis. The Trump fans are out saying DeSantis is an establishment hack who sold out to the government on COVID and the like, which obviously is not true. The Florida governor has a novel tactic on which to pull Trump supporters away from Trump. I want to play for you a comment not by DeSantis, but by the Florida Surgeon General.
How many different ways do you want to say the same thing? So Joe here, Joseph, Dr. Freeman, we've got two Joes here, just shared their study that basically found that the risk with these mRNA COVID-19 vaccines is just much higher. It's not in the same ballpark as any of the other widely used vaccines. And we did a study in Florida where we looked at all-cause mortality and cardiac mortality after the COVID-19 vaccines. The study's preliminary. It's not perfect. Most studies aren't perfect. But there are two things that were remarkable. The first thing that was remarkable, of course, was the major finding, which was there was a signal for a markedly increased risk of cardiac death in young men, specifically in that age and sex group.
Okay. Now, what is this about? You see, if we're really honest, who led the push for the COVID vaccine? Trump. Which group of people are the most skeptical of the COVID vaccine? Trump supporters. So DeSantis is using that against Trump. DeSantis is pivoting himself, separating himself from Trump on the COVID policies. DeSantis is out there suggesting essentially, hey guys, I was never bad on this. Hey guys, I'm not the one who developed the COVID vaccine. I'm the one who was skeptical of it. See, DeSantis has a point on this one. Who allowed Tony Fauci to reign supreme? Who allowed Tony Fauci to be in charge of this? Who put Tony Fauci on the stage? It wasn't Ron DeSantis. It was Donald Trump. So what DeSantis is trying to do is, while Trump comes after him and says he was an establishment guy, and by the way, DeSantis was one of the founders of the Freedom Caucus. DeSantis was one of the people who led the revolt against John Boehner. DeSantis has run Florida so competently that even a number of a minority of, but a statistically significant number of Democrats voted for him. He got a majority of the Hispanic vote in Florida. By the way, the Wall Street Journal has a new poll out that in a matchup between Joe Biden and Donald Trump would lose to Biden, but Ron DeSantis would beat Joe Biden. Do Republicans want a winner? Let me just step back and tell you what's going on here. You live by the media, you die by the media. Donald Trump would not have been the Republican nominee in 2016 except CNN, Morning Joe on MSNBC, and Fox News all gave him disproportionate coverage to the other candidates. An outside analysis showed that Donald Trump essentially got $4 to $5 billion with a B dollars in in-kind contributions from the media in the way they covered him. I remember Wolf Blitzer covering Donald Trump as if he were the president of the United States. When Trump's plane would land during the primaries, they would go wall to wall. Jeff Zucker himself admitted it. The head of CBS at the time, Les Moonves, said that it was Donald Trump may be bad for America, but was great for CBS's bottom line. And they covered him obsessively. Everybody did. Everybody did. And that coverage helped him get the nomination. Morning Joe on MSNBC, they interviewed him, they promoted him, they talked about him. He was a novel candidate. And it blew up in all of their faces. And now nobody's giving him the attention. He's got to try to get people to post on Twitter what he's putting up on Truth Social. You know, he could go on Tucker Carlson. Tucker's a friendly audience. He could go on Tucker Carlson on Fox and get a massive audience and talk about whatever, but he's not doing that. He's on Truth Social trying to put up videos. I just got an email from somebody yelling, no, Trump isn't responsible for the COVID vaccine. Stop already. You're acting like a stooge. Actually, to be fair, Amber, to be fair, Donald Trump funded the rapid COVID research project. Donald Trump took credit for the COVID vaccine. Donald Trump got the government to advance the funding for Moderna and Pfizer to help them. That's the God's honest truth. Donald Trump took credit for the moonshot of rushing the COVID vaccine, getting it to market as quickly as he possibly could. His administration did. His administration oversaw it. The COVID vaccine was developed while Donald Trump was president of the United States. You may not like that inconvenient fact, but you don't have to worry about me claiming that we know you hate Trump, you're hurting your credibility. I'm telling you the truth. You don't like the truth. You think I'm lying to you. I'm telling you the truth, but you don't have to worry about me. Ron DeSantis is the one that's going to remind everybody. Are you not going to believe Ron DeSantis? He's got his Surgeon General out there suggesting that back in 2020, when they were rushing the development of the COVID vaccine, they left key criteria out of the review. 2020, who was president in 2020? Who was in charge of the FDA in 2020? Who was in charge of the CDC in 2020? Who was the one getting Congress to fund the project? It was not candidate Joe Biden. It was President Donald Trump. Don't be mad at me for pointing that out. All I'm trying to tell you is what's going to happen is DeSantis wants to make inroads with that 31% of only Trump people who say only Donald Trump. And the way he's going to do it is to point out, hey, all of you people are suspicious of COVID. He was the president when it was developed and oversaw the FDA, the CDC, and Tony Fauci. It's going to be his campaign tactic. It's not mine. Don't be mad at me for telling you what's going to happen. Don't be mad at me for telling you what's going to go down. But that's what's going to happen. It's obvious now. DeSantis is impaneling a grand jury. He's asked the Florida Supreme Court to impanel a grand jury to look in what was hidden, what was covered up. What do we know about myocarditis? That's how he's going to pivot on Trump. It's becoming more and more obvious. It's a way to alienate Trump from his base. And there will be some, like the person who just emailed me and blamed me for pointing this out, who will never be alienated. But he doesn't even need a single one of them right now because he's already 60-30 in the polling against Trump. But he can pad his margins against other comers if he does. Like it or not, that's what's about to happen. That's the play we're about to see. You know, one of the great groups that actually has taught me a lot about campaigning and pivoting and messaging and how to become a better conservative activist is Americans for Prosperity. And you could get on board with them and also become a smarter, better, more thoughtful conservative activist, more able to go to local governments and make persuasive conservative arguments and draw people to your side. All you do is go to americansforprosperity.org/Eric. AmericansForProsperity.org/ERICK. Americans for Prosperity has been out helping conservatives since the early 2000s, since the Obama era, since the Tea Party movement. They haven't wavered in their support for free markets and free people. If you haven't wavered in your commitment to free markets and free people, if you haven't wavered in your commitment to conservatism, if you believe conservatism has actually done good in this country as I do, Americans for Prosperity would love to partner with you. They've got chapters all over the country. They're not just a think tank in D.C. Go to AmericansForProsperity.org/Eric today. Join them. Become better at what you do as an activist. Hello there. They're just telling me as we come out of commercial break that you guys can haze a new call screener tomorrow. Oh, why not? Welcome back. It is Eric Erickson here. No time for phone calls. None at all. Speaking of COVID, I got to talk to you about this real quick. This is kind of nuts. This is a legitimate news story. You're going to listen and think it's not. This is one reason I don't subscribe to Fortune, the magazine that put Sam Bankman-Fried on its cover. This legitimately, listen to this. This is the headline. People who skipped their COVID vaccine are at a higher risk of traffic accidents, according to a new study. If you passed on getting the COVID vaccine, you might be a lot more likely to get into a car crash. I thought it was men who were most likely to skip the COVID vaccine, not women. Oh, I'm going to get in trouble with my wife on that one. Those are the findings of a new study published this month in the American Journal of Medicine. During the summer of 2021, I'm sorry. It's Canadian researchers whose Supreme Court released their photo today. They're all dressed up like Santa Claus, except they don't mean to be. That's just the way their robes look. Canadian researchers examined encrypted government-held records of more than 11 million adults, 16% of whom hadn't received the COVID vaccine. They found that unvaccinated people were 72% more likely to be involved in a severe traffic crash in which at least one person was transported to the hospital. It has nothing to do with the COVID vaccine. It's a correlation causation issue here, the way it's being reported. And essentially they're saying, a lot of people who didn't take the COVID vaccine also don't tend to follow the rules or listen to government, and so they ignore things like the speed limit, and that's what it was. The spin on this, though, is completely discrediting. It's a completely discrediting story. Also, it's Canadians, not Americans. So we still have the worst drivers here are women, not COVID deniers. I can't. I'm sorry. I know. So, okay, the reason I'm making these jokes is because I got an angry email the other day from a feminist who was telling me how misogynistic I was, and she clearly listens to like every word I say. And so I'm fairly certain I've just like caused her brain to blow up. She's banging away at her keyboard right now. I told you you're a woman eater, Mr. Erickson, and my shoes are very comfortable. Undoubtedly so. But seriously, this is do researchers not even understand how discrediting these sorts of stories are and how the media plays them up? Oh, of course you COVID deniers are involved in accidents. You just ignore the rules all the time. Correlation and causation. Also, who are the people most likely to get the COVID vaccine? The elderly. What is the pool of people least likely to drive? The elderly. When you just start thinking about it that way instead of rushing out. But of course, Fortune Magazine is Fortune Magazine, and they're going to do something like that, and they're going to rush out these sorts of things. They're the people who put Sam Bankman-Fried on their cover as some sort of man of the year. Gave him all sorts of positive exposure. I did not have time for, and I needed to, the CEO of FTX, John Ray, he's the guy who had to come in and clean up Enron. He's cleaning up FTX, says there are no books. There's no paperwork. They were running the whole thing out of QuickBooks. There's no paper trail. There's no documentation. There's no nothing. He's never seen a company so poorly run in his whole life. These people need to go to jail.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office.
More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.